The whole mountain started shaking like it was about to break apart. An avalanche broke loose, sending tons of white snow rushing down the slopes like waves in the ocean. The sound was so loud it echoed for miles, scaring birds into the sky and making small animals run for cover. But even with Zane hitting it with everything he had, the magic barrier barely reacted. It just flickered a few times, like a stubborn light bulb that refuses to die. The blue energy of the barrier seemed to laugh at his efforts.
Now this is interesting. This barrier's tougher than anything I've ever seen. My strongest punch barely made it flicker. Someone really didn't want anyone to find what's inside. That makes me want to know even more. Well then, time to show this barrier what real power looks like.
The Ghost King Dragon Ape let out a roar that shook loose more snow from the mountain peaks. Its massive fist, bigger than a boulder, slammed into the barrier with such force that cracks appeared in the nearby rocks. The whole mountain trembled like it was caught in an earthquake, sending small stones tumbling down the slopes. Meanwhile, in the grand halls of Death Hall, with its black stone walls and flickering torchlights, William Costa was in the middle of discussing the frog problem in Newland when his face suddenly went pale. His hands started shaking, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead.
Brother, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost.
William Costa's mouth kept twitching nervously, and his face turned so green it looked like spoiled meat. His voice shook as he explained what was happening.
The barrier. My special barrier in Newland. Someone's attacking it. They're trying to break in and steal what we worked so hard to hide.
What? Wait, could it be Zane? Has that troublemaker returned already? This is the worst possible timing.
Jacob Costa jumped up from his chair so fast he knocked it over. The wooden chair clattered on the stone floor, the sound echoing through the hall. This was exactly what they'd been afraid might happen.
What's the plan? We can't just sit here and do nothing.
This is way too big for us to handle alone. The Master needs to know about this right now. He'll know what to do.
The two brothers ran through the dark corridors of Death Hall, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Their hearts pounded with each step, knowing they'd failed at their one important task. They found their master sitting in his massive black iron chair, which looked more like a throne. He was so angry he'd punched the chair's thick metal handle, leaving it twisted and bent like a pretzel.
Useless! Completely useless! I gave you 2 whole months. Even a child could have done this job in that time. But you two? Nothing but failure. What am I supposed to do with such worthless disciples? If anyone finds what's hidden there, if someone else gets their hands on it, you'll both be thrown out faster than garbage. Not just from Death Hall, from the entire Wormhaven Palace.
The Death Hall Master's eyes blazed with fury as he glared at his two students. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees from his cold anger. William Costa and Jacob Costa stood frozen like statues, not daring to even breathe too loudly. They'd never seen their master this angry before.
But Master, we need to do something fast. I can feel my formation getting weaker by the second. It's like paper trying to hold back a flood. Soon it'll break completely, and Zane will find everything we tried to hide.
You can't even handle some young punk who isn't even at semi-marshal king level? Jacob Costa, take whatever people you need and stop this Zane. I don't care what it takes, take his space of Newland away from him. Once we control that space, everything inside belongs to us.
Jacob Costa's face dropped like a stone. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he remembered his last encounter with Zane. The idea of fighting Zane again made his old wounds ache. He'd already gotten beaten up by that kid once. What good would regular fighters be? They'd be like throwing eggs at a rock. William Costa watched his brother's reaction, rolled his eyes thoughtfully, and then made a quick decision.
Let me handle this. I'll go deal with Zane myself.
You? Are you sure about this?
The master's forehead wrinkled with doubt at first, but then his expression softened slightly. He knew Zane was strong enough to beat Jacob Costa easily. Regular fighters wouldn't last 10 seconds against him. But William Costa was different. He'd reached Marshal King level. That should be enough to handle some upstart brat.
Fine, but move fast. If he finds what's hidden there. If he gets his hands on it, we're all finished. Everything we've worked for will be ruined.
Yes, Master. I won't let you down.
William Costa bowed quickly and ran off toward Newland like his life depended on it. Jacob Costa followed close behind, worried about what they'd find. Back in the hall, the Death Hall Master sat alone in his twisted chair. Something didn't feel right, like an itch he couldn't scratch, a warning he couldn't quite understand.
Maybe I should see this for myself. Better to be sure.
His form blurred and vanished like smoke in a strong wind. In the space of Newland, the Ghost King Dragon Ape lifted its massive hands high above its head. They looked like dark clouds against the sky. When they came down, they hit with enough force to split the earth. This time the barrier didn't just crack, it exploded into tiny pieces of blue light that faded away like sparks. The dark hole underneath looked like a monster's mouth waiting to swallow anyone who dared enter. Zane changed back to his normal self, his muscles still aching from the transformation. Looking down into the hole made him feel uneasy. It was barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side, and it seemed to go down forever into pure darkness.
A secret tunnel right here in Sky Mountain? Someone went through a lot of trouble to hide this. Huh. Time to find out why.
Zane started flying down into the narrow hole. The walls were slick with melted snow, and cold water dripped constantly. The air got colder and damper the deeper he went, and the light from above grew fainter until it was just a tiny dot. After what felt like forever but was really just 30 seconds, his feet touched solid ground. The space opened up into a small room that looked like someone had cleaned it out in a hurry. Old footprints in the dust showed others had been here before. There wasn't much left, just some broken wooden boxes scattered around like trash and pieces of wood that might have been furniture once. But in the center of the room, perfectly placed on a stone table like it was waiting for him, sat a blue stone box that seemed to glow slightly in the darkness.
Now, what do we have here?
Zane's eyes lit up with excitement as he walked closer. The box was cold to the touch and felt older than anything he'd ever held before. Inside was a scroll made of sheepskin that looked ancient enough to fall apart if you breathed on it wrong. But when he carefully unrolled it, expecting to find some amazing secret, there was nothing. The scroll was completely blank, like a new sheepskin that had never been written on.
This doesn't make any sense. Nobody puts this much effort into hiding a blank scroll. There's gotta be more to this. Maybe some kind of hidden writing, or magic that only shows up under special conditions.
Deciding to figure it out later, Zane carefully put the scroll back in its fancy box and stored it away in his magic ring for safekeeping. He searched the room again more carefully this time. The space was tiny, maybe 30 feet across at most, and the ceiling was so low he could touch it by reaching up. Everything was covered in dust except for those old footprints. Just when he was about to give up and leave disappointed, his foot accidentally knocked over one of the broken boxes, and there it was. A plant unlike anything he'd ever seen was growing in the darkness. It was as long as his hand, with exactly 9 leaves shaped perfectly like tiny tigers. Each leaf tiger seemed alive somehow, giving off waves of vital energy that made the air around it shimmer. The whole plant glowed with a soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat.
What in the world? This plant? It's incredible. Each leaf is a perfect tiger, and the power coming off it... I've never felt anything like this.
Looking closer, he found some seeds scattered around the plant, but these were clearly dead, dry and lifeless, without even a spark of the amazing vital energy the plant was giving off. Moving as carefully as if he were handling precious jewels, Zane dug around the plant's roots and lifted it from the ground. He needed to know what this thing was, and he knew exactly where to go to find out. The Hall of Foreign Affairs at Wormhaven Palace was famous for knowing about rare and strange things. If anyone could tell him what this tiger leaf plant was, they could. Protecting the plant with one hand, Zane flew straight toward the hall, his mind racing with questions about what he'd found. Soon, he arrived at the External Affairs Hall.
That's far enough, Zane. Stop right where you are.
There stood Jacob Costa, looking ready for a fight. Next to him was someone Zane had never seen before, but he could guess who it was. William Costa, looking even more dangerous than his brother.
Thank you for listening. For more videos, please subscribe, comment, like and share. Thank you.